What is up, everyone? Today we are finally back to break down a UFC card from a DFS perspective. And this week we have a 14 fight kicking off the new year, 1 5-round main event, Mackenzie Dern versus Amanda Ribas. And without further ado, actually, with some further ado, I want to talk about the doc. So trying to get on these notes every week this year as much as I can. Started this week off. They're not complete yet, but they will be today or tomorrow. And I also added my council of dudes, as DFS PhD likes to put it. This is my council of dudes for MMA, John Kelly DFS. I think he does a great job with fight picks, DFS, general betting advice, sheets. Your guy, that's your guy for advanced lineup construction, MME, one of the best there is as far as that goes. And then we want picks for fight picks, betting tools. Some DFS, a lot of entertainment. I think their pod is really fun to watch. So yeah, these are the three channels I thought of. I'll probably add 1 to 2 more that I do listen to frequently. But yeah, there's that. There's the fight notes, and then we have the prediction strike tips and tricks, and lastly the fighter rankings every week. And that's what we'll be doing in this video. So we'll get into it. We'll start off with Fatima Kline versus Victoria Dudakova. So at first glance, the line did seem a bit crazy to me. We have Fatima Kline at minus 950, extremely heavy favorite. The issue is 9.8K and a 14 fight card. I don't think she'll have anywhere near the upside that we're looking for. I mean, plus 200 ITD, it's just wrestling, sure, but you're going to need crazy upside at this price with that poor of an ITD line. And I just don't see it with the fighters on this card. So I think she's almost an entire fade. MME, single entry, all contest types, even cash. I think there's way better options for cash. So I don't like the Kline side. And Dudakova, listen, the problem with MMA is there's really no such thing as value. Like, it's not like NBA where you get a guy who's going to start and he's like 4K and he's going to provide major value. MMA, you really need your fighter to win. If you're going to play any GPP, you need all 6 fighters to win, and it's in very rare cases 5 fighters and 1 fighter with a very strong floor. So I just can't recommend Dudakova with these win odds. Now, what I can do is I can probably say she's a good cash punt. She's going to see a decision at a very high clip, and in her decision losses, I think she can get you something, 20, 30 points. I mean, if you get lucky, you might get like this 50 points. I doubt it in this matchup, but I think Dudakova could be interesting for a cash punt for her floor. But as far as the GPP, I just can't recommend it at plus 650. So this fight's a pass for me. Moving on, Tulio versus Poteria. So Poteria is a guy I will take shots on every time until he's out of the UFC. He's always sub 7K. He's 6.6K this week. And I think he has the win condition to break slates. I think he's very live for KOs early in fights. Now, it'd be nice if he could ever do it. I mean, he loses just nonstop. But if he can win, I do think those wins are going to compete for the optimal almost every time. And you can see the one time he has won in his last, 4 or 5 fights is by a low-scoring decision. So that was great, playing him in that spot and then still not getting the win condition. So, again, there's always variance to this, but I do believe Poteria is a guy that in his wins will score extremely well, and he's plus 375. It's bad, but it's not that bad that you can't play it. So I'll take some shots on Poteria and MME. And Tulio, big favorite. Now, the thing with him is he does have some takedown upside, which does interest me a little bit. He's not high volume, but he's got a good finishing line, and I do think he has some takedown upside. I mean, listen, he'll look good. He'll look good. He's got the metrics to put up 110 plus here. It's just that I do worry about his downside if he does make it out of round 1. Let's see, like plus 150 round 1. I do worry, like, if he gets a round 3 finish, is that going to make it? That is a concern, but overall he's a good play, so we can include him. And yeah, I guess I have some interest in both sides of that fight. We'll move on to Aliev versus Solecki. Pretty predictable matchup here. Aliev is going to be the grappler. He's going to come forward, shoot his takedowns, look for control. Joe Solecki is a tricky grappler himself, but mostly a submission first defensive grappler. I don't see Solecki getting any of his own takedowns here, and I think that Solecki's most likely path to victory is a submission early, either with a guillotine or off his back. And for people who've been watching me, I just don't rate those outcomes as high percentage at all. I think it's very low, and the odds reflect that here. Plus 425, Solecki to win. His ITD line is the same, so I kind of agree with that. I think his win condition, it could be good for DFS. An early submission win at 6.7K will score well, so he will be included as a very fringy play. Again, I think if anything, these odds might be giving too much credit to what I think his win condition is. So I have little interest in him, but still some interest, right? And then Aliev, the issue with him is, yes, he's going to be controlling the fight. Yes, he's going to be getting takedowns, but I don't really see a big finishing line for him. Plus 400 is really, really poor, even with the takedown upside at 9.5K. So Aliev is fine. If you think that this finishing line is wrong, then Aliev's a really strong play. But I don't disagree with the line, and at that line, it's not a great play at 9.5K. So we'll leave him in, but definitely not a priority spend up. Smith versus Parsons. So this is a really tough matchup for Preston Parsons. Number one, he's a wrestler, and he's fighting a guy who's a better wrestler than him. And number two, Parsons was originally fighting someone else. That fighter pulled out, so now he's all the way up at 7.8K, and he's plus 350 to win. I mean, you just can't do it. The only reason I would be considering playing Parsons is if he was facing a pure striker. And I knew that if Parsons were to win, given the situation, he would score a ton and provide a ton of leverage. Now, he will provide a ton of leverage, but at what point is it just too much of a long shot to play this? Plus 500 ITD. He's fighting the really bad stylistic matchup. I know it's already baked into the odds, but yeah, I just think Parsons is a MME only, and even then, it's a really tough play to make. Jacoby Smith, wrestling upside, finishing upside, ground and pound. He kind of has everything you're looking for out of a 9.4K fighter. Good ITD line. I think he's your first elite play this week. Moving on, we have let's see, Cesar Almeida versus Abdul Razak Alhassan. Cesar Almeida is the exact archetype of fighter that I want to be under on in 2025. I've just last year just getting frustrated over and over again, playing these pure strikers that are low volume, seeing them go to decision over and over and over, putting up no points. And this year I'm gonna change something. I have to be under on these guys. I just think the field plays them way too much. 9.3K. The guy has no upside into the decision whatsoever. Pure striker, low volume. All the things that you don't want. Now he does have an okay ITD line, plus 115. I mean, even that's not great. 9.3K. But you really need that to come in round one, round two, and preferably round one. Plus 400 round one. I just don't have any interest in him really. I'll get to him. I won't X him out by any means, but I'm definitely going to be lower than the field in this spot. Moving on to Abdul Razak Alhassan, 6.9K. He has a judo background, but it's really hard for me to say that he'll come in here and shoot takedowns. I just haven't seen it often enough to really predict that, even though Cesar Almeida has 0 takedown defense. So assuming Alhassan comes in here and fights how he normally does, live for an early round 1 KO, I still like it. I wish he had that reliable takedown upside, but he really doesn't. So in that case, it leaves him as a good MME play. Maybe GPP, to be honest, not MME only. Yeah, I think you can play Alhassan in single entry. I don't think it's the craziest call. Moving on. Ernesta versus Caliari. Ernesta's a high volume striker. Not much to offer her back. Good cardio. I wouldn't mind playing her at these, certainly at 7K price range, maybe even like mid 8K. The problem is she's 9.2K. And for her style, it's typically not going to get there at 9.2K. The ITD line's not there. It's just, I'm really hoping on her to have a just significant volume upside to even have a chance here. Like 150, 200 plus strikes in a 3-round fight. and that's just not a likely outcome to rely on. So I think Ernesta is a weak play. Am I going to exit out? I probably should. It worries me because I have seen her have significant volume upside in the past. So I need to think about this more. But for now, I'm going to say Ernesta's close to a full fade. And Caliari, 7K flat. She can get takedowns. Reasonable money line. I think that makes her a reasonable play here as an underdog. So we'll leave her in. Next up, we have Roman Kopylov, Chris Curtis. Firstly, I want to look at Chris Curtis ITD. Chris Curtis plus 210 money line and plus 250 ITD. Sure, I think that's fine. Kopylov plus 400 for a pure striker at 9.1K. No thanks. And Chris Curtis is also a pure striker, but he does have very solid takedown defense. So I don't think we're gonna see this Almeida 5 takedown type of upside, because Almeida has literally zero takedown defense, whereas Chris Curtis actually has very good takedown defense. So yeah, I think this one plays out on the feet. I think that it does go to a decision at a high clip, but given the pricing, given the Chris Curtis as an underdog with the better ITD line, I think he is the preferred side in a matchup that likely doesn't do well. I think that he's the only guy that I have interest in. Austin Bashi, Christian Rodriguez. So Austin Bashi is a guy I'm very familiar with. He fights out of Michigan. I've watched him plenty of times on the regional scene. He's going to box, shoot his takedowns, get his control. He'll stay busy with ground and pound along the way. And I think he has what I would call a tier 1 DFS style. Takedowns, control, submission upside, all of that stuff. I have a lot of interest in Bashi this week. He's one of my favorite plays. Great money line for the price. ITD line could be better, but once again, if he gets a finish along with his fight style, he's going to put up a monster score. Like, you're going to see a 110 at least if he does finish here. And even without a finish, I still think that he can have that 100-point upside in decisions. Christian Rodriguez just not winning that often, and I don't really see the win condition where Rodriguez scores. I think his win condition is he fights off the takedowns and, can win the later rounds by a narrow margin. I don't really see how Rodriguez puts up a ton of points here. So for that reason, do I want to include him as I think Rodriguez, we'll say if Bashi is high owned, Rodriguez can be included as a fringe play. But without that, I really have little to no interest in Christian Rodriguez here. Next up, Gadzi versus Lopes. I like both sides of this one. So we have Gadzi, who has takedown upside and a little bit of finishing upside as a minus 210 favorite. Bruno Lopes, I think, has a very good chance to land a knockout here and also can potentially shoot takedowns himself. So I like this fight environment. I think both sides have a lot of upside, and I don't really have a preference towards either one. Uros Medic versus Punahele Soriano. So we saw Soriano last time. He had one of the best DFS scores we've ever seen. I think it was 170. Crazy. He's fighting Uros Medic this week, and we'll start with Soriano. People can say what they want about him as a fighter, his skill set, and I know a lot of the betting talk is that they don't like to back Soriano, and I understand why. But from a DFS perspective, he's the exact fighter you want to look for. Finishing upside, power in his hands, grappling upside, pace. He's been known as a boom or bust fighter. And again, in betting, you don't want to back that, but in DFS, you do. So I think Soriano is a very good play in DFS this week. And Medic on the other side, he can find a knockout here. If he can stuff a few takedowns, he's very live for a KO, minus 110 ITD. What is he in round 1? Plus 300 round 1, not the best, but I think that Medic will have an opportunity to find a knockout here, and at 8.7K. I think he's a pretty good play. Jose Johnson versus Felipe Bunes. So we'll start off with Johnson. He's a very tall flyweight. he can be tricky in the grappling, but he's not really a wrestler. And Bunes is is a grappler and a wrestler. So I think that Bunes can score here in his win, 7.6K. Moderate underdog. I think he's someone we have to add as a priority underdog. And Johnson, a tall, rangy striker with some submission upside, potentially, especially with Bunes shooting takedowns. He could leave his neck out there. Johnson at 8.6K. I think we can consider him as a fine or fringy play. I mean, we're splitting hairs here. We'll call him a fringy play. So yeah, I think both sides of this look okay. Moving on to the main event, Amanda Ribas, Mackenzie Dern. So I don't really have a take here. I think Ribas is a little bit better everywhere, and I will pick her to win. But as far as DFS goes, I think that the winner of this fight can score 100 plus. It'll most likely go all 5 rounds. And given the pricing, 8.5K and 7.7K, I think both sides look good. It's a very typical UFC DFS main event. It looks good. You could potentially fade it on a 14-fight card like this. How much of your portfolio you want to have without the main event is up to you. I wouldn't say there's an exact number, but I'm definitely not going to force this main event in. I'll probably get to a lot of it, and I think that's the right thing to do. But I don't think that you have to include it in every lineup. Moving on, we'll talk about Thiago Moises, Trey Ogden. Moises is a guy who it just seems like he's where fantasy points go to die. I know he's known as a submission grappler, but we never really see that out of him. Like when's the last time he's really impressed with a performance as a big favorite against what was his name, Melk Costa? That was the last time as a short notice, big favorite. I just don't see this upside for Thiago Moises. The only time he ever puts on a good performance is when he's a huge favorite and expected to do so, and otherwise he just seems to be a dud every time. So I know he has the line value. I know he's minus 185, only 8.3K, all that stuff. The takedown upside. I get it, but how many times am I going to watch this guy do the same thing? Go out there, throw his technical leg kicks. He's just too technical. He's not aggressive. I think that this is a very questionable play here, and if the optimizers and all of that stuff get to a ton of Thiago Moises because of the line value, I'm definitely willing to be under on that. If not, take Trey Ogden for that direct leverage instead. So Moises, usually I put him as a good play, but I'm gonna veto that and put him as a fine play, just based on his style. He's just too patient, not enough upside for me. And Trey Ogden does have a ton of wrestling upside, and if he wants to be the offensive wrestler in this matchup, I think that he can absolutely land takedowns. And I don't rate Moises' finishing ability via submission from his back, pretty much at all. So I like Ogden here. I think he could be potentially one of the best leverage pieces on the slate. I'm interested to see what ownership looks like, and if it is what I think, I have a lot of interest in Ogden. But I do think if you're playing cash, stuff like that, sure, you do have to respect the line value of Moises to some degree. But for me, I think I'm going to be under on Moises if it turns out how I think it will. Last but not least, a weird mid-range fight, Ponzinibio versus Harris. So you have pretty much a pick 'em, Ponzinibio with a touch of line value at 8K. Both guys show okay ITD lines. This mid-range, you really have to respect, because the best way to describe it is if you try to hand build lineups without using this mid-range, and you can even add like the 8.3K and 7.9 to this mid-range area. If you don't use this, you're going to end up with, either a lot of salary on the table or a lot of these stars and scrubs types of builds. And those builds are just hard to get through. It's hard to get 3-4 underdogs to win on a slate and be optimal in DFS. So you really do, even without great metrics, have to respect this range. And I think because the ITD lines are good enough for me, and it's in this great price range, I'm including both guys as priority plays. So we'll put Ponzinibio and Carlston Harris in our player pool. So that's going to do it. If you have any questions, please do leave a comment or message me in the Discord. Hope everyone has a great first week back in the UFC DFS scene. And that's going to do it. Thank you guys for watching as always. And I will see you in the next one.